What's going on, advocates? Welcome back to another edition of Equity with your host, myself, Reginald A. Howard. Got an exciting episode today. Thank you to all who subscribe, tune in, share all them good things because it is greatly appreciated. I actually want to just jump right into things because I'm coming off of a birthday weekend and I'm excited to talk with you all. Um, I'm hoping you're liking these individual episodes as well. Trying to move from just a strictly guest based to like a mixture of different things because I think there are different avenues we can talk into. But I wanted to get started just sharing how impactful this last year of my life been. I spoke this season on talking about how I had to change and transition and growing into a different individual, learning new things and becoming a new version of myself. And I don't think it's a coincidence that it happened right around the birthday, right around you know, the day that is the knowledge of your year of birth. So me realizing and reflecting. So let me go backtrack and say I went to Washington DC for my birthday. I visited the and I want to make sure I get the name right because it's an important staple within the Black community, but the National Museum of African American History and Culture. So if you see my hat, if you're watching it, I'm actually wearing and rocking it. I thought it was a dope hat, and I actually um just wanted to support in any way as possible. And I think I'll get into it. I don't know if it's going to be in the beginning or in the end, but that's how I celebrated my birthday. Actually, let me pull up what I shared on Instagram. And if you're not following me, please follow me on all social media platforms. I'm trying to do better of like finding time for myself, but also finding time to like post and come uh capitalize everything in its totality as opposed to just posting. I know at some point when you building your brand, you building your organization, whatever, you kind of feel like you got to post all the time. And I'm learning to like kind of just relax a little bit more now and post when needed. Post if anybody really want to hear me, this is the weekly way to hear me is coming on the podcast. So subscribe to the podcast as well. But yeah, I'm trying to do a better diligent job. But so let me pull this post up. I said DC wasn't a bad place to bring in chapter 32, learning to post less and live more, getting lost in the moments of memories. Appreciate everyone that called, text, message, and sent birthday love my way. And then I asked everybody to show some B-Day love in the comments. And that's just because again, sometimes you want to you need to just be appreciated. You need to find your appreciation, but you also it's also good to feel appreciated. I was a person that really wasn't into celebrating birthdays at one point. I felt like you have one, you have them all. But now I'm learning to, honor yourself. I think a lot of times men don't honor themselves. And we take ourselves and say, hey, this is what we're supposed to do. So we don't take advantage of it. Even with Father's Day coming up, the same thing. But I'm learning to just like mothers need to be honored and celebrated, women need to be honored and celebrated, men, you should take your flowers and credit as well, because you work hard. And I know how hard I work, so I like to be honored and appreciated, even if it's only by myself and acknowledged by myself. So went out with wifey, went to DC. Was able to get the hotel. If you're watching it, you see the bedrooms decorated. Um, we went out to dinner. We was able to go to a nice restaurant, which I'll get into in a little bit. But went to a nice restaurant, got good eats, and I'm learning to start trying new foods and eat. Was able to link up with some friends, my college friends, who still considered best friends to this day. That's over. We met each other in '09, so we got a strong decade in a few years added on to it. So it was great to catch up with them. One of my friends lived in DC. One of my other friends was already coming up, and we were able to catch up and aligned at the same time. And it's ironically because DC, we weren't. Me and the wife wasn't gonna go to DC. We actually was gonna go to North. Where were we gonna go? Not North Carolina. What's the Niagara Falls? But we decided not to go last second because DC was on the list. But then once I found out, some of my friends were already coming up for an engagement party. I was like, why not go and actually be tourists of DC while also being able to link up with some friends. So that was a good time, getting time to catch up with them. um, I keep hitting the wrong button. That's how you know I don't be on social media like that. So it was a great time linking up with them. A quote about I'm not doing bad for my age, but I want so much more in life. I got to get it. Y'all already know if you've been listening to these past few episodes where I'm at with that. I tried and I want to make sure it's good ramen for the first time. The only ramen I know is from oodles and noodles and the top ramen that you buy from the dollar store, things of that nature. So I tried ramen for the first time. It was very good actually. I forgot what I had. I think it was like spicy chicken noodles. And just trying different things and expanding my horizon and getting out of my bubble and circle and things of that nature. So I was able to try some ramen for the first time. Wasn't bad. I'm thinking about doing it a lot more. The wife always she's not afraid of trying anything. She grew up on that growing in and being able to try different foods. So I'm just now expanding my palate into trying them as well. And being able to go out with her and enjoy the time, I think helps out a lot, because she eases me into these different things and being able to like, all right, I don't think you're gonna like this may be too raw, but I think you may like this. And so we just were being able to be tourists and be able to be around the city and linking it with friends and being able to connect and just build community, and just even walking around and enjoying DC and being able to just be without the kids, I think was a great trip and a great experience. So overall, it was great being able to just be free of like obligations. I didn't open the laptop. I was thinking about recording the podcast because I found out the friends was going to be there. I also thought about recording the podcast because it was going to be me and wifey chance alone. So I was like, why not get a podcast episode again? But again, that's one of the things that I'm learning is that I can turn. I think one of the things I said earlier this year or in the earlier episode was like separating my identity of like business, podcast, and all that from who I am. And so I decided not to take advantage of that opportunity and just be be Reg. I'm starting to separate Reginald, which is the professional, from Reg, just the guy that like to watch movies, spend time with his wife, spend time with his kids, friends, occasionally play the video games. Just again, me trying to learn that. So it felt great to just unwind, unplug is the word I'm looking for. Unplug from the world and just be and just exist. And whatever you decide to do with that existing is up to you. So it was great to be able to have that experience. Um, and speaking of that, and I felt like so before I did this podcast, I wanted to reflect on some of the things that I've learned from this year, from 32 into 33, and how has impacted me, my growth. I decided, or as I started to process it and think about what I was going through, I said, I think I'm stepping into my identity as a man. And I think that, and again, this is me working it out live, and you get to hear it. Um, we go through this process of puberty, and it's like where you change from a teenager to a young adult. And people understand that your voice get deeper, you get hair in areas, all these different things. You start having girls go from icky to ooh, like I want to talk to her. But I think there is a puberty stage where you become a man. You go from a young man to an adult man, and I think I know where I hit it from fatherhood, but I don't know when I hit it from and I can go into the fatherhood aspect right after this, but I don't know when I hit it as far as me being a adult male, if that makes sense. And I realized that during this weekend because I just realized that I wasn't tolerating certain things anymore. And that's probably partially why the transition happened that I talked about in earlier episodes. I know that's why it happened, where I felt like I was a lot of the times, because you're younger, you kind of look for guidance and you kind of look to adults to guide you, and eventually you have to take over your guidance, and eventually you learn and you become sustainable. I want to say between that 25 to 30-year-old age, that's when that starts to happen, some earlier, some later for others. um but I think that's what happens after a while, where you start to you learn who your identity is, you learn about what you want out of life. You learn about who you are, and just where you're going, and what you're not going to tolerate. Like for example, while me and the wife was out eating, first of all, we got there probably 5-10 minutes early, which is fine. We understand that. We let them know. And we booked them had reservations, and they was like, all right, it's gonna be a 30-minute wait. So what are we reserving for if it's gonna be a 30-minute wait? Like, so that, but I'm not elitist, I'm not a bougie, I'm not that type of person. But again, the old me, and I'll explain why I'm using the story, the old me would have just accepted that and tolerated that. So I didn't say nothing. The wife was like, all right, we'll just go sit at the bar, which we've done plenty of times before, just to compensate the time, because we're used to that. And being in certain spaces. We get to the restaurant. They come and give the wife a menu, and they give me a menu. They walk off. But I think wifey already knew what she wanted. I still had some time to decide. She came back, she got the menu from the wife, was like, all right, I'm gonna put the drink in. Again, I didn't actually, you know what happened? They didn't give my wife a menu. She grabbed the one. There was one in front of her. I never had one. So she grabbed the one, and she already had her drink. They came over once they came over and acknowledged us, they gave me a menu. And so they walked off. But by the time they gave me a menu, and my wife had already had the time to decide, she put her drink in. She put her drink order in. I say all that to say they never came back and got my menu or got my order. They never did. They came and gave her drink, but she never acknowledged me and was like, "Hey, mind you, the menu was closed when she came back. I know it's busy. Again, you could be so understanding to a fault at one point. I'm learning that. Like you can be so. And I see that in my oldest son, because he's just like me, where you can like compensate to your demise, and people just won't give you that acknowledgement. And that's when I think those short people complex come up there, and you feel the need to be loud and attentive and all that. And I'm sure I had some of that when I was younger, where you want to be the loudest in the room, you want people to know you want all these different things, but they never acknowledged it. And so we sitting there, wife finishes the drink, 30 minutes go by, we damn near at the bar for an hour. And they never came and got us. And so she got up. I was already pissed by that time, because now you made us wait, and then now and mind you, that was off the heels of um we had another experience that's escaping to me at the moment, where it just was unbelievable customer service. And again, I'm not an elitist. I'm just learning that if you're not assertive, if you're not you don't have to pay. You don't have to go to places where you're not tolerated, or whatever the case may be. And I'm not making it racial or anything like that. I'm just saying you're paying the money for a service, and you expect a certain type of service that come with that. So going back to the restaurant story, she went and got him. Um, and was like, "Hey, that we've been waiting for an hour at the bar. No one has called us." Da, da, da. So they came 5-10 minutes later, find this seat, and it was that moment. I don't want to say that was the transition moment, but at that moment, I said, when the waitress came over, um, and I wish I remembered her name, and I'm sorry, I just remember her age, because we were talking about birthdays. Shout out to you if you ever hear this. She was 34. Um, and we were talking, and I pulled her to the side and said, "Hey, I want to be honest with you. I'm not having a good experience here. This is I'm supposed to be celebrating my birthday." Oh, before getting to her and me telling her, pulling her aside. So she came and seated us, or whatever the case may be. Um, and then she was like, "All right, I'll be with you in one moment," and walked off. Mind you, when you're already mad, certain things add cherry on top. Usually, when you go to those fancy restaurants, it's expensive restaurants. It's a birthday, so we try to do it up a little bit. Um, they're more so prone like, all right, is any you're celebrating a birthday, happy birthday. They know this information before it's already put in. I think I want to say wifey talked to them already and had them know that it was a birthday dinner. She didn't even acknowledge it. And I said I was already over the top right then. So fast forward, she did say it after a while, maybe like after she walked past us about 2 or 3 times, and was like, "Oh yeah, happy birthday, by the way." And so that just adds to the top. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to talk to her. I pulled her to the side and I said, "Hey, I just want you to know that I'm not having a good time. I'm not having a good experience." And I explained to her everything that I just shared with you all. And she said, "Oh no, like I'm sorry to hear that. My apologies, and I can definitely understand." So she accepted ownership of it. And I share that story because after a while, me and wifey was talking about it. I was telling her about what I'm sharing with you all today about just not accepting certain stuff because one, I work too hard. Two, like people get stepped on that don't, with grace, of course. Like I'm never coming at nothing crazy, but just with grace. And I the reason why I share that story, I think I lost my train of thought, but the reason why I shared that and me not just accepting anything, walk back a few years. I was in a sandwich shop. I won't put their name bad because it wasn't bad all the time. But I was in a sandwich shop and I was ordering a sandwich, and you can kind of guess where I was at because all sandwiches processes to make it the same. You get the bread, you get the condiments, you get the meat, whatever it come through. It's a service line. And so when we walked in, me and the wife again, we walked in, and and I still feel bad to this day. Me and the wife walked in. She looked over at the bread and she was like, "I'm okay. I don't want this. I'm good." And I was like, "What? What's wrong with it?" It looked old. It looked stale. We went. It was on the weekend. We was just getting some food to go in the house. And she was like, "I'm good. I don't want it." I was like, we here right now. Let me eat. Like I'm hungry." So he asked me what I wanted. I told him what sandwich I want. And he pulls the bread out and there's mold on it. Again, I come from an environment where we get it. We understand the struggles, whatever the case may be. But I hadn't realized that I'm paying for something. I'm gonna keep saying that. I'm paying for something and I deserve I won't say the best quality, but serviceable quality where it's not disrespectful. And so it's mold on the bread, and he looks at me and was like, and I don't even think he acknowledged the mold. I'm like, "Hey, there's mold over here." He almost felt like I was telling him something that's like, huh. Like he was appalled that I pointed it out. So he cut the bread off or cut the mold off in front of my face. He didn't even change the bread. He cut the mold off in front of my face and was like, better now. And if I'm being honest with y'all, I was like, "Yep, good." And I took the sandwich in that moment. I think coming from a space of poverty, coming from a space of not having, coming from a space of like, "Hey, I'm just trying to I'm trying to make sure I'm not displeasing other. I'm trying to make you appeasing." I took the sandwich and ate it, but I felt bad every bite of it. I felt bad. I don't even know if I finished it or not, but I felt bad. And that story is like 6, 7 years old, but to this day it still rings true. Like, why did I just accept that? Why my wife? And maybe it's because she's a woman and she understands that my wife looks at that and doesn't want to receive that type of service, but I'm just willing to acknowledge and appease and accept that. And so fast forwarding into the whole story and sharing all that to say that as I grow into becoming a man, as you grow up, I start to realize the little boy in me wanted to appease the adult, quote unquote, and the man in me is like, "Yo, what are you doing? Like, you don't have to tolerate that. You can either not accept that type of service and go somewhere else. You can say something, but you have to address it and not just be the quote unquote little boy who doesn't get his needs met." And so I'm learning that now as I transition into my upper age and being able to be like expresses of my needs, even to my wife, and even expressing to her like, "Hey, Father's Day is coming up, or birthdays are coming up, and I want to be acknowledged." Like, before it was like, birthdays don't mean nothing, or Father's Day, I do what I'm supposed to do, and X, Y, and Z. But now it's like you almost gotta train individuals because we have been taught in a certain way, men included, and I think men the main culprit of this because we don't we just we just like workhorses. We just involved in the grind. Hey, I gotta provide and protect. I'm gonna go here. But when Mother's Day come around, mothers are highly acknowledged. When for Valentine's Day come around, the woman in the relationship is highly acknowledged. The Valentine's Day is not supposed to be for the man. It's supposed to be both ways on any of feet. And I can see if with and I already understand that there are some people in relationships and in situations that they do more and they should be acknowledged in a lot of different ways. And I get that. So I'm not talking about them specifically. I'm just saying if you are a father putting in the efforts, you need to be acknowledged. If you're a husband that does what he's supposed to do, and both of those are, you need to be acknowledged. I always tell my wife, like, there's a point where I think there's no such thing as a deadbeat mom or a deadbeat wife or any of those different things because women just get or individuals. I don't even put it on the gender thing. Certain individuals just get a certain type of respect just because they bear and I guess it is women bear the child. Like, hey, you bear the child, you went through that. So, but regardless of if you don't have the right situation, the right feelings, the right guidance, all those different things, you bear the child, you deserve that. I agree. But I also think there's a minority of fathers or a large majority of fathers who are doing what they said supposed to do, but they never will get a credit acknowledged or whatever the case may be because they don't they just do what they're supposed to do and you can get walked over by that. And so just learning to stick up for yourself as a well, I can only speak from my perspective as a man, but just learning to speak up for yourself is one of the things that I'm learning as I move forward and I get to just grow into who I am. So, um, as I move on, I shared that story. I don't want to beat in a dead horse when it comes to that. I think it's just being comfortable with my yeses and my nos, and I spoke about Father's Day and Father's Day coming up. One of the conversations I had with my wife was about me becoming of course becoming a man but actually becoming more of a father too. And of course it wasn't a bad father. Like I picked my kids up, dropped them all, bath time, present, all the things that you're supposed to do, but the emotional capacity of a child I don't have. That I don't know how to have that. I think that's the whole gender thing with like when they have those pre things of my wife is more of a mother to our baby children than I am a father to our baby children. But as they grow older, that's where I shine at. That's where I shine at in learning them as individuals. That's where I work the best at because now you're teaching me, and all I know how to respond to an individual teaching me. Whereas I guess as a baby you can do that too, but they're less communicative. They communicate in a way of like crying and pooping and all that, and I can't. That's hard for me. It's sort of why I don't really like animals that can't speak. Well, no animals can speak, but that's why I like animals. They can't speak. So how I'm supposed to know what they needs, man? But you talk to an animal lover, like my one of my best friends, he is a dog lover. He got and that's his son, and he understands, and they understand each other. I don't get it. I want to learn it. But I digress. So now that our sons are getting older, I'm learning for myself how I how to become a father, a better father, because they're teaching me like what are your needs, and you can actually advocate for that. And now that you can talk, you can process it. And you're younger, you may not have all the language, so it's more heavier on the parent to like go into the language to play the guessing game and figuring it out. But as you grow older, you can advocate for yourself as much as possible because some kids are dependent on it. But you can advocate, you can speak, and now that's where dad comes in to shine. Reg, the communicator, the speaker, all those different people comes in and shines and being able to talk and relate to the individual. So I know a lot of individuals have been following me, but I can tell you the exact moment where I became a father. And if you are on this podcast, you're probably seen it multiple times. But again, for the new listeners who haven't been a part of it, I can share the exact moment because it happened last year when we were on shout out to Blackman Hill when I was on the King's Corner tour. Um, and we was on the tour doing a community event for the men. And I brought my son with me, and I realized that there was a lot of different traumatic situations that I wasn't bringing up or I hadn't acknowledged yet. So I'm going to play this for those who haven't seen it. And here we go. Oh, maybe I got to turn this up. So
Yeah, I want my dad to do me up. Please say, I read. So,
So if those who don't know, that's the king. Oh, hit the wrong button. Shout out to Black Man Hill for putting that together. I know they're getting ready to go on tour again. Um, just yeah, that was my breaking moment though. I had realized that my lack of fatherhood was preventing me from being a father to my son, and my sons, and now I don't feel as strongly about that anymore. I think with practice, with time, I've been a father for 10 years now, or at least 10 years. And so now I'm more capable of having certain things and hugging my son and kissing him and having conversation and fathering. I think some people become dads, but you don't learn how to be a father. And I'm learning how to father now. And excuse me, I think having those conversations with my son and him teaching me and requesting things from me, I'm starting to be comfortable with that and learning and valuing that. And I think as I grow, I'll grow as a husband, I'll grow as a father, just keep on growing. And a lot of individual, I was talking to my wife about that, a lot of individuals look at me and they're like, yo, I thought you was cool, I thought you had it all. And I had it all in the sense of I thought you had it figured out, like, and to an extent, because I think there's preordained qualities that are in you, and you may not realize that they're in you until you recognize them in others that don't have them as easily. And when I say recognize them, like, um, it's hard for someone to be like, all right, for example, the main one where a dad's are absent out of the homes, like I just didn't see that reality for me and my kids. And I know every situation is different. And so I was fighting hard. Like, me and my wife weren't in the best of spaces. So that's why I always salute her, because we both grew together to make a marriage. We had children out of wedlock. We had our children before we were 19, 20 years old. We had children before we had a chance to understand ourselves as young adults, and we grow fast. And that's a story that a lot of individuals have to, deal with. And they have to manage all the time and grow through those pains. And what usually happens is, like, listen, I barely got it figured out for myself, so I got to separate myself from you, because I can't be a parent, be a spouse, and be myself at the same time. I barely recognize who I am. Or you have the individuals, and usually that's mothers that do this, where they are so committed to motherhood that they forget who they are as individuals. So yeah, they're raising their kids, but they don't have who they are all figured out. And then by that time the kid grows up and they're just left as like, all right, who am I now? And so I salute anybody that's able to make that work, because it's not an easy task. It's not one that many have been able to fight through, especially from the men that I know in my community. It's like, listen, I can't do it. Like, I'm still trying to, make amends on my end. And so I think having that preordained inside me of trying to like fight through that, it may look like, all right, you got it all together. It's like, nah, this is a fight. This is an everyday struggle. And I put more effort into that than anything else. I always talk about like infidelity and cheating and how people go out there. I'm like, yo, I'm so invested in who I am, so and invested in figuring me out and what I got going on, that it's hard for me to even go out there and bust them, because I that's requiring a time and investment and a strategy and a navigation, bro. I don't got time for it. Like, I'm trying to figure out how to start a business and entrepreneurship, be a father, make my relationship work. If I had the space for that, because it ain't saying impossible. A lot of men do it. I ain't. I just ain't. I don't have the capacity on my end. To be a lot of women do it too. I just don't have the capacity or space in my end right now. And again, that's not saying that I'm perfect or I just don't. I value me more than I value that, and I'm trying to learn how to um present that and package that so that other brothers can get that same, type of and people in general. Again, I only speak for brothers because I'm a male, and I can understand that and I can relate to that. But I know every individuals everyone can understand the value in figuring yourself out, and finding you before finding someone else. And it sounds cliche, but it's such the truth. And speaking of that, the last thing I'll share in regards to like birthday festivities or just what I learned over the year, um honestly, the one main thing that I have gone through and learned, and I think I can say that now. I wouldn't have been able to say that 3 months ago when I was depressed and feeling anxiety and stressed and struggling. The one thing that I know for me is I got a lot of confidence now. And again, confidence as a man, confidence as a father, a confidence as a business over confidence and skill set, just confidence overall. And I think I just wrote a quote down too that kind of sums that up. I don't know where I heard it from. But it was Eric Thomas. Shout out to ET. Um and the whole squad. He said, putting your gift in the system. And a lot of the times when we're out here, just again figuring ourselves out, it's hard to understand our gifts. So before I joined like organizations like Black Men Hill or NAMI or even Drexel University, I knew I was talented. I knew I had things I could offer. I knew it was different. Um, I actually I was overconfident, if I'm being honest. I was overconfident and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna take on the world. So that's why you get in 2018, you get the books, you get the podcast coming out, you get the speaking, you get all these different things coming out. It wasn't until I got with those organizations that I put my gift in a system. And that's a different level of I don't want to say commitment. What's the word I'm looking for? That's a different level of I'll give an example. You take a street baller and there's a bunch of a bunch of ballers that could probably be the best ballers of all time. And but because they cannot put their gift in a system and navigate the system with their gift, it's hard. Are they actual ballers? Because a part of that is being able to navigate the system with that. That's why you got to salute a LeBron James. You got to salute a Michael Jordan. You got to salute anybody that and take it off of sports. Salute a person that goes to college that made it from environments or that successful entrepreneur that didn't have the best circumstances and they put their gift in the system and they put their gift in that system and now they can be successful in that system. I had moderate success when I was doing it on my own. But once I put it in the system, I was able to explode. I was able to expand. I was able to do certain things that I wouldn't have been able to do on my own. And honestly, a lot of that was a buck in the system too. Like I can do it by myself. I don't need nobody. I could get out here and get it. I can move around. But if you use, and I don't even say use, but if you can benefit the system as much as the system can benefit you, it's a mutual partnership. And so now I'm learning. I was the guy that didn't want to go back to school. I didn't need no college degree. I can go out there and get it on my own. I could be successful. I don't need that. But why not have both? Why not go to the NBA and get the degree? Why not start the business and run the Fortune 500 company? Why not be a mutual or consult or whatever the case may be? And again, the gaining the confidence was like, oh, so corporate America or these organizations need an individual like myself. I've done a ton of community work, but I also got now gaining credentials and gaining information in that way. Ah, oh, I'm about to buck the system. And when I say buck the system, I'm gonna learn it and I'm gonna break it. and it's going to be a breakthrough because it's a person that could bring an element from both parties. You could speak both languages. You got that bi-directional education. And so now me knowing that, I'm like, oh, where all the systems at? And so when they said put your gift in the system, where all the system is, that my gift can benefit them and I can benefit from the system because I'm offering you something that's an offering back, and now I'm gaining confidence with that. So that's one of the, again, that's the last thing I'll sum up with. And of course I spoke on it earlier this year about me not really having that confidence and relearning that. But I think that's a part of the breaking. A part of the breaking is some people are not successful without the system. They can't be successful on their own, but they also can't be successful within the system. And so now me learning to navigate with the system and being able to do both at the same time. I always tell the young brothers, man, when I go and talk to them in schools or just in community, like, bro, you're smart enough to do both. And sometimes I'm talking to myself too. Like, you're smart enough to be able to navigate whatever dream that you have and whatever goal, do it. I'm not telling you not to do it. Just do both, because if you're an athlete, if you break a leg or an arm or a limb, you're never going to be able to do that. But if you have that secondary education, my brother just told me that to my one of my closest friends. He was like, yo, I know I'm not a school person, but he went up and picked up a trait. And that's a trait. He doing construction and all that stuff, and he catching it naturally, catching it naturally. One of the biggest, he was one of the best football players that I ever known. But if he would have did both, he would have had the best of both worlds in his arm. And I think talking to young brothers and having those conversations, do both. I'm talking to myself, do both, Reg. Do both. Yo, you can have this dream of running the biggest podcast, but you can also help in an organization as well be successful. Do both at the same time. And you and gain, have the confidence to do both. And I think for me, that was the biggest lesson I've learned in throughout this journey, is having confidence, stepping into manhood, becoming who you are. All these different things, they may take time. Some people get them early because they have superheroes telling them they have superpowers. And I think for me, just learning and being and through experience, you just gain that confidence. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to like re-image up and just learning these different things. Um and just gaining different information and providing it as well as I learned it. So that's where I'm at with that, and gaining confidence. I did speak on earlier at the beginning of the podcast my trip to the National Museum of African American History and Culture. There we go. I read the hat. That's how I remember it. So I wanted to share that a bit because that was a real good experience. And one of the things that I want to share is, hold on one second. I don't think I would do it justice without letting someone take you all on a tour. So if you're watching, you'll be able to see it, but if you're listening, um you can listen to a person describe it. I wouldn't have did it justice, so I wanted to bring someone on or not bring someone on, but look up a YouTube video that kind of describes it to a sense. Um that exempts the I got an email that distracted me. That's why I turned my phone off. But hold on one second. Let me get I hope this is y'all hear my passion with this, because it was a good birthday. I was able to relax, and I was able to get some history, and again getting some confidence from uh being in the culture for that museum. So hold on one second. Let me pull this up. We good. All right, we good. We're just gonna keep that right here. All right. So we gonna play the video and reflect on it afterwards. Now, if any commercials come up, my apologies.
February is the month of Black. And I thought, what better way to explore Black history than visiting one of the most popular museums in all of Washington, D.C. Hi, I'm Jose, and I welcome you to explore the accomplishments, the civil rights movement, and history of slavery as we take a tour of the National Museum of African American History in Washington, D.C. Behind the tale of the great American development comes a story of another group of people who've been at the forefront of America's birth, the African American community, a community who's been at all the breakthroughs, wars, and construction of an independent nation. The African American History and Culture Museum take us through the experience that African Americans have had to endure since the country's birth. Our museum tour starts with a breathtaking view of the museum's design. The museum began construction in 2012 and completed in 2016 with an opening ceremony by President Barack Obama. We start with some of the most notable work in Black history, and that's art. The colors and expressions bring to life the voice of the community, built around metaphors of African American struggles. This portrait of Harriet Tubman, embroidered in cotton, silk, and velvet, is an exhibition of protest, defiance, and resilience. And if we speak about Black history, theater is one of the greatest achievements. From stage to film, African Americans have birthed icons to the American narrative. And through theater, the community has addressed the suffrage of a people. On display, we see historic garments from the monumental showcase for colored girls only, an emotional ride of identity and suicide in a sexist and oppressed society. In the heart of African American entertainment is reality, where the range from comedy to memoirs of slavery and struggling neighborhoods tell the story of being Black in America. The architecture of this museum is a little bit different than the other museums. It gives it that individuality, and it makes it stand out in the national mall. The dark history of America and the story of segregation and slavery. We can travel through time and feel the division in this country. This train is a perfect model of the segregation that existed, where the line was drawn for a section to allow white and Black. At the back of the bus or the back of the train was a case for color. No mixing of a people in a school or even sharing water fountains. This led to a different America and created a fragmented society, which still feels the effects of that division. But segregation and slavery didn't begin in America. It's been a part of world history across all nations. All continents have seen slavery, from tribe to tribe, or foreigners from other lands. To understand America's role, we have to look at the beginning, the transatlantic slave trade. Modern slavery can be traced to labor shortage. When industrialization grew across the world, West African tribes created a business of trade. And as Europeans expanded and explored the world, the partnership eroded, leading to mass slavery. When it comes to America, industrialization created an inferiority complex, and it's displayed here with the groundwork of the Klan and books painting African Americans as second-class citizens. The troublesome foundation, where the Declaration stated all men are created equal, but slavery remained rampant within the ranks of the forefathers. It wasn't until the culmination of the country's division between the Union and the Confederates that slavery was abolished.
Hold on, yo, it's commercial, but I can tell you now, I ain't even see half of that stuff that was on there. So I appreciate. I'm looking at this as much as y'all looking listening to it.
The period that came after was another challenge to African Americans, where many went back to slave masters in search of work. Things like segregation and blackface plagued the development of the community.
I didn't even get to utilize half of this stuff. This is amazing. Check it out if y'all ever get time. And I'm just talking because I don't know if he's going to talk. They're talking about the Reconstruction period. There was an Oprah Winfrey theater there that we didn't get to check. And
If you're
plus,
enjoying this video, take that time to hit subscribe and give it a like. Now back to the tour. The story of fighting, the fight against injustice and for equality. The civil rights movement was led by notable figures like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and icons like Rosa Parks. It pressured President Lyndon B. Johnson to sign into law the Civil Rights Act. But the injustice didn't end, leading to other forms of sending a message. Subtle protests like the 1968 Mexico Olympics and the Black Power salute. Olympians Tommy Smith and John Carlos raised a black glove fist during the national anthem, which was a salute to human rights. Sports has been a defining platform to get the message across. From world champions like Venus and Serena Williams to boxing legend Muhammad Ali, sports is dominated by African American athletes who have become role models across the world. This museum is filled with typography, notating the words of freedom and hope. The walls echo the anguish and pain that African Americans have witnessed throughout their American story. And if we dive into history, African Americans have been silent in the shadows, from world wars and the Harlem Hellfighters to the inclusion of African American women in the military. They've always played a major role in protecting America. And this wing circles around tradition, leaders, and voices. The legendary hip hop group Public Enemy rapped about the conditions of the community, and Huey P. Newton co-founded the Black Panther Party to help create community support programs. The civil rights movement opened the eyes to the world of the struggles African Americans faced, and it kickstarted a change in American history, where a community could eventually make it to the White House. Quoting the first African American president, Barack Obama, a change is brought about because ordinary people do extraordinary things. The African American community has endured so many challenges, but continues to make groundbreaking accomplishments, shattering the stereotypes of inequality. This museum is a perfect collage to contain the stories and history of the community. I'm Jose, and if you've enjoyed this video, hit subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and share. If you want to explore more of Washington, following video.
yeah, shout out to, I want to make sure I give this brother a shout out, Jose on tour. I appreciate you for capitalizing everything because again, me and wifey said we're going back. There was no way we'll be able to capitalize all that and be able to recognize everything that the museum had to offer. Um the last thing that I said, because when we went, it was a Memorial weekend. So as you excuse me, as you already know, that it was packed, jam packed. And people were lining up and it was crowded, but we want to go. But our other friends too, they went and they said they spent 3.5 hours there. I think we did about an hour and a half, maybe. But again, with the crowd, you're not able to like get as close as you would like to the actual everything that you want to see. And then even being able to take in that much history in that short amount of span, it's hard. There's no way that you'll be able to take all of that, and you could spend a whole day on gathering that. And so one of the things that I wanted to, read off that stood out to me, excuse me, but let me share something because I this was the most profound painting in the museum, and I want to read the author's words that was on the wall, but also someone that did an article on it, um because this spoke out to me, and I actually want to buy one if I can get one. So shout out to Sean Rucker with the paintings of psychological redlining. And so as it goes on the wall, Rashawn Rucker, born 1978. These arts are done from 2020. They're graphite and paint on paper. Sean Rucker is best known for his work dealing with Black male identity and social conditioning. In his psychological redlining series, he merges portraits of African American men with images of rock pigeons. Rock pigeons are generally viewed as urban, unclean nuisances. Rucker asserts that people perceive Black men much the same way, essentially pigeonholing them psychologically into a space where they don't belong. The red cages framing each portrait relates to redlining, a system real estate policy democrating communities of color by red lines on a map to limit access to home loans, insurance, and even grocery store. Rucker says he created these images to communicate why we as Black men often don't fly, even though we have the ability to go far and beyond our circumstances. And if you're watching this on YouTube, that's my image that I captured of it. I am going to try to get the brother on the podcast just to go a little bit deeper because he sound like we're into some of the similar things. And just get an education and get the knowledge and get it out there to the people. So this was the one thing that stood out to me. And I'm glad I was able to capture the image. And the one last thing I'll speak on that. Oh, and I could leave the image up. Someone did an article. Shout out to let me make sure I give them their credit. Matthew, I don't want to get your name wrong, so I'll just say Matthew, on Medium, artwork for the National Museum of African American History Cultures Reckoning. He has exhibits part one, and he was explaining the photo. He must have had a similar impact. Rashawn Rucker's series also appears there. The series contains 13 portraits of Black men in red cages with rock pigeons arising from their head. The portraits immediately caught my attention because of the image of the men's heads, the cage, and the pigeons brought to mind Lawrence's Dunbar's poem "Sympathy," which concludes with the line, "I know why the cage bird sings." I thought about W.B. Du Bois, Double Consciousness. I thought about the opening of Dwayne McDuffie's and the Denny's Cohen's hardware series. Each of these made me think about the psychological redlining because each deals with, as the description of the series put in the museum, Black man. I just read that to you. There's a lot to examine in the series, from the initial thought of the cage to the red outline, which depicts systemic racism through redlining, to the rock pigeons that reference to urban spaces. These are all important things to think about when looking at the psychological redlining. So yeah, you can just imagine if you're only listening, a red cage with different variations of Black men with pigeons as their hairs, and the different connotations that come with that. So that stuck out to me. Shout out to him because that definitely is something that made me want to get inspired. Like that's why I got the hat on. Made me want to go a little bit harder, talking about equity, getting into an expansive mode. Again, the transitioning was because I wanted to go deeper and wider at the same time. And I feel like equity and having these different type of conversations can only do good for myself and the community at large. But I think that's it on my end. This has been an amazing conversation. Shout out to all you that subscribe, listen, share, and let everyone know about the podcast. Please be sure to leave a review on Apple and Spotify. I gotta find out another way to close this out, but thank you for tuning in to Equity with your host, myself, Reginald A. Howard. I see you on the next, or I enjoy you spending time with me on this episode, and I'll see you on the next one. Have a good one. Peace.